All right. I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get started with the talk. So welcome everybody. I hope you're all doing well. It's been really cool to see so many people signing up for the seminar series. Hi. And I think we have a really amazing lineup for this fall and next spring. So do check out all of the talks that are coming up. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I just wanted to remind you all that this is supposed to be, you know, fairly informal and sort of a lighthearted experience for everybody. We want this to be fun and welcoming. So have fun. But there are a couple of rules. So just one, that you keep yourself muted while the talk is happening. And we are recording this talk. So I just ask that if you prefer not to be recorded, just make sure that you keep your camera off and only write questions into the chat. If you're fine being on the recording while you ask questions, I'll tell you you're totally free to show yourself and unmute yourself. We want this to be informal and as personal as it can be, given that it's online. But yeah, so if you, at the Q&A, if you want to ask a question, you can kind of do it in two different ways. So you can either raise your hand. So in the little participants tab of Zoom, there's a little button that says raise your hand. And you can do that during the Q&A to be called on, and then it'll put you in a nice little queue so we can keep track of who raised their hands first. Or you can simply write your question in the chat, and then I'll read it aloud if you don't feel comfortable being on the recording. So that's that. I also wanted to thank two people who helped me put together this speaker series. So Melissa Rubinchuk and Nicholas Roberts, who have been really great in helping with all the logistics to put this series together. So thank you for that. And yeah, so while the talk's going on, feel free to engage in conversation in the chat. Other participants can, you know, answer you, and you guys can sort of have a back channel going on. Yes, so that's all I wanted to say in terms of logistics. And without further ado, I'll introduce our speaker. This is really exciting. It's our first speaker of the fall series. And it's going to be a really amazing talk. This is someone that I've admired for a really long time. And so I'm really happy that she's here with us today. Elisa Omodei is the predictive analytics lead and of mobile vulnerability analysis and monitoring at the UN World Food Program. And she's also the Vice President Secretary of the Complex Systems Society, which is really awesome. And make sure you check out the society if you haven't. They have a really great conference. And she's going to be giving us a talk today entitled Who, Where, Why, Non-Traditional Data and Predictive Analytics to Map Socio-Economic Vulnerabilities. So Elisa, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Juniper, for the introduction and also for the invitation. Thanks also to the other organizers and for everyone for being here online today. I'm really excited, yeah, to take part of this seminar series. So, well, the fact that this seminar is actually happening on Zoom rather than in person, like given the current pandemic, is another reminder that we live in a rapidly changing world, a world where over 70 million people had to flee their homes because of persecution or violence, where extreme weather events and epidemic outbreaks are steadily increasing, where over 2 billion people are estimated to move to urban areas by 2050, join the 4 billion that already live there. And also where global poverty has taken yet another toll as a consequence of this pandemic. So in this context, it is of fundamental importance to ask where the most vulnerable people are, how many they are, and also what is it that makes them more vulnerable than others to these threats that we mentioned. So how can we quantitatively measure and understand these new vulnerabilities? Like in all fields of research, basically, what we need first is data. But what data do we need exactly? Well, let's say traditionally in this context of socio-economic vulnerabilities and characteristics, data sources such as surveys, census, administrative or private registers have always been used. They are also costly and time-consuming, though, like they have a huge potential, but they also have some limitations. And in the last few years, in the last decade or so, researchers have shown that actually less traditional sources carry some relevant information beyond their original purpose. They can be used as a proxy to detect and measure socioeconomic characteristics and vulnerabilities. So let's think, for example, of all the digital traces that we leave behind on a daily basis on the internet, on social media, when we use our laptops or our phone, just when we make a call or using geolocation apps, for example. And also another relatively novel source of data is this huge volume of high resolution Earth observation images that is obtained daily from satellites and drones. To give a few examples, a few years ago, Blumenstock and other colleagues, they used an anonymized data set which combined responses from a poverty fund survey, which was administered to around 1,000 individuals in Rwanda. So they combined this with their mobile phone records. And by doing so, they were able to predict individual socioeconomic status by building metrics from the mobile phone records, such as, I don't know, total volume, intensity, and timing of communication, the structure of the individual contact networks, the patterns of mobility and migration, like any kind of information that they could extract from the phone logs. Then use this model, fitted, validated on the phone service respondents only, to then generate poverty estimates for the other 1.5 million subscribers of the telco, and so to produce these high resolution maps of the distribution that you can see here on the left. In another work, another research team worked towards like the same goal, estimating wealth, but using instead publicly available satellite data from different African countries. So they combined satellite images of luminosity at night with high resolution daytime images. And they built a convolutional neural network to identify features in the image and managed to explain up to 75% of the variation in average household asset wealth in these countries. So these were like some of the very first studies in like mapping and predictive poverty and wealth through non-traditional data. Then over the years, other data sources and other kind of vulnerabilities have been explored as well. So for example, Twitter data was used by Ramaswamy and colleagues to assess spatial segregation of immigrants in of immigrant communities in over 50 cities around the world. So they basically used NLP to identify the language of each tweet. So they collected this huge tweet data set, then applied the NLP to identify the language of each individual tweet, and then they were able to measure segregation within each city by looking at the spatial distribution of the languages in the city through Twitter. A similar approach was used by another research group. They instead used a mobile phone activity dataset for the city of Milan specifically, and they also did a small mapping by analyzing the international country codes of recall and an SMS made and received by the users, of course, under the assumption that this would tell you also where the person was originally from. In another field of research recently has been also investigating gender inequalities. So, for example, Facebook marketing API has been used to quantify the Facebook gender activity ratio all over the world. So in the top left figure, you see red countries that are on the red scale. They are the ones with the higher proportion of males than females on Facebook, and the opposite is true for the blue scale. And then in another work, in a collaboration actually between Telefonica Chile, the GovLab, UNICEF, and the ISI Foundation, they studied urban mobility of women and men in the metropolitan area of Santiago in Chile through this large anonymized mobile phone dataset. Interestingly, they found that women visit fewer locations than men, and their mobility is more localized. And also they were able to show that higher gender mobility gap is correlated with socio-economic indicators. Now, these are a few examples of kind of things that are being explored by the community. And now I would like to focus more details in the work that my colleagues and I are carrying out at the UN World Food Programme to predict a specific kind of vulnerability that is affecting almost 1 billion people worldwide, which is food insecurity. How do we define food security? Well, food security is defined as physical and economic access for all people at all times to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. So when all these conditions are not met, then we consider a specific population to be food insecure. How do we measure this in practice? And also in a quantitative way. Well, so the work program created a few indicators. An important one being the food consumption score, which is measured through household surveys. So each household is asked how often during the last 7 days they have eaten food from different categories. So for example, staples, pulses, vegetables, meat, etc. And then these numbers, like the frequency of the consumption, is summed in a weighted manner, where the weight of each category is proportional to its, the nutritious, high nutritious items have higher weights than less nutritious one, let's say. And then this weighted sum constitutes the food consumption score of a given household. Then based on this And this value, like there are like some cutoff thresholds, and then a household is labeled to have poor, borderline, or acceptable food consumption. There are standard thresholds here. There's some examples, but actually they are also like country specific. So depending according to the diet of the specific country, you might have different thresholds. So this is an indicator for one specific household. But then to obtain the level of food security or insecurity in a specific area, like a state, a province, during a specific time window, like a given month, WFP and other humanitarian organizations, they perform hundreds of surveys, either face-to-face, a few times a year, like a couple of times a year normally, or like more and more frequently through computer-assisted telephone interviews, through mobile phone surveys, and then by aggregating all the household level information with all these the collected surveys, then we can compute the percentage of people with poor and borderline food consumption. And this is what constitutes our food insecurity metric. So the percentage of people that have insufficient food consumption in a given area at a given time. Now, large-scale surveys, they're like needed, but as well, like they are also very costly and time-consuming. They require a lot of people on the ground, and so they're not feasible in all places at all times. Yeah, they're only performed once or twice a year in different countries. However, the information that they provide is fundamental for humanitarian stakeholders to plan their intervention, ask for like budget, etc. So this is an information that's needed, and possibly it's needed at all times. So what we asked ourselves, like what the research question that was posed is, like, can we now cast the food security situation in areas where no survey data is currently available by building a predictive model that makes use of secondary data sources, basically in a similar fashion to the studies that we just reviewed. Let me point out that this is, as you might think, not a trivial task for two main reasons. So one is that food security is highly dynamic, so it changes over time more than, for example, poverty, because it's linked to the seasonal calendar, harvest, etc. And then it also the goal that we had was to really build a model that could give an estimate for any region in the world. So it was not enough for the need that we had to just focus on one country, but we had to be like a global model. So that, of course, made things even trickier. Now, how did we go about that? So first of all, we started by identifying the key drivers of food security. So what we did was to revert to experts in the field. And food security experts identified three factors. One is conflict and physical insecurity. One is weather extremes, like droughts or floods. And the third is economic shocks. Of course, other drivers are also play a role. And like this year specifically, of course, like there's health shocks, like epidemic outbreaks or other health issues. There's also crop pests and animal diseases, and then also any non-weather related natural disasters. So I mentioned earlier, yeah, drought or floods linked to weather, but then you would have like an earthquake or any other kind of disaster that are not linked to weather. But let's focus for now on this stream. And so what we did was to combine diverse data from both traditional and less traditional data sources. So to measure conflict intensity, we used the ACLED dataset, which is a global database of conflict events and fatalities, conflict-related fatalities, that is updated weekly by use automatic extraction of spatial temporal information from online news sources, and then so this is done by this ACLED organization, and every week they share an update with data from all around the world. Then we revert also to satellite data for precipitation and vegetation status, and as well as for measure of wealth to the night light intensity images that, as you can recall, have been used previously as a proxy for poverty. And then we also use some more traditional economic data that is collected by WFP, like inflation trends, staple food and other commodities prices on the local markets, undernourishment estimate, etc. And of course, yeah, this is where we're at now. And then, in addition, we would like to include some other factors that we haven't included yet, like natural disaster informations, more information on health shocks, etc. So from this global and diverse database, we then built a vector of features, basically for each province and time window for which the WFP has an estimate of the percentage of people with poor and borderline food consumption. So overall, we had access to around 6,000 estimates collected by WFP during the last 15 years in regions and provinces across more than 60 countries, mostly in Africa, Asia, and also some in Latin America. So this would be our ground truth data set. So then how did we go about predicting our target variable, the prevalence of insufficient food consumption from our vector of feature X? Well, we used a pretty standard machine learning technique called XGBoost, which is basically based on gradient boosted decision tree ensembles. And what we did, we cross-validate our model, like training it on a subset of the data, then test it on other subset, and we in the end we obtain a model that could explain 69% of the variation in the prevalence of people with insufficient food consumption. And here on the left, you can see, for example, for Mozambique and Yemen, like the actual versus the predicted target. Now, how does the World Food Programme use this model in practice? Well, we created a tool that is actually accessible through this website, hungermap.wfp.org. It's a bit heavy to load, so I'm not gonna try and do it now because of I'm afraid I'm not sure if the internet connection will allow for all the people connected to be stable. So, but yeah, you have the link there, so you can explore on your own. And so this tool allows the WFP decision makers to gain insights on the current security situation worldwide. So you can click on any country and explore the latest food security estimates that are produced by our model for each of the provinces or states of the country. You will see that in some countries, you will actually find trends that come from a continuous monitoring system that we are now, thanks to COVID, we scaled up this continuous monitoring system through mobile phone surveys in almost 30 countries. So we now basically show the food security situation almost in real time from actual surveys. And then for all the other countries in the map, you will find instead what like the prediction is given by the model that I just presented. So this was like a very first attempt at estimating food insecurity, and we already have a few follow-up projects that we're exploring now. So first, we obtain a grant from the Global System for Mobile Communications, and through this we are exploring the use of mobile phone records. So mobile phone metadata as a complementary or even alternative data source for food security nowcasting. So the idea is to build features based on credit apps, phone activities, as well as mobility flows, etc. A little bit in the fashion of the first study that I showed you. Another project that we're doing in collaboration with the ISI Foundation, this research institution in Turin, Italy. So as I was saying, now we have this continuous monitoring system set up. So for some countries, we have time series of the evolution of the food security situation. And like specifically for Yemen and Syria, we now have 2 years of data collected. And so we are using this pretty unique data set to try and go beyond just nowcasting. So like asking ourselves, can we predict how food security is likely to evolve in the next few weeks or even months? And yeah, so what we're doing is basically looking at the past evolution of this time series, so combining this information with other time series to measure the evolution of conflict or market prices, etc. Now, I would like to dedicate the last part of the presentation to some reflections on the challenges and limitations of the proposed approaches, but also the opportunities that they bring. So these reflections are really mostly like the outcome of joint discussions with colleagues also at UNICEF, like where I was, like before the World Food Program, I was actually a research scientist at UNICEF Office on Innovation, where we were working on similar projects. And really the aim of this reflection is to try and provide some guidance on how we can bridge the gap between the academic research and the international organizations and governments that could benefit from these data and methods. So first of all, like the very first thing we need to keep in mind is that all these data were not like data, I mean like mobile phone records, satellite imagery, social media, internet-based data. They were not originally collected like for the purpose of this kind of research. So they were generated for other purposes. And so this poses like a challenge because we need to understand the limitations and also make sure that users have agreed to their use. When it's private data. So especially for mobile phone records, this is highly sensitive data because they measure individuals' activity and mobility. So they need to be anonymized, aggregated, and this makes data sharing a complicated task for mobile phone operators. And we need to find a good balance, like the more the records are aggregated up, the more information is lost. But at the same time, you want to preserve privacy. So for each case study, we need to find a good trade-off to understand what would be an acceptable level of aggregation that still preserves privacy. The fact that this data will not collected for research purposes also means that we can't control for something, right? So the data might not be representative of the entire population, right? And mobile internet connectivity at different rotations in different geographic areas. and also the popularity and the penetration of mobile phone operators, of online platforms, they largely vary across different geographies and also different demographics. And so every time, like you start a study, like an in-depth analysis is needed to understand and account for these biases before any of this data can be used. Then another thing, when it comes to predictive models, we need to make sure that they are not blindly applying to different contexts than the one they were trained and validated on. So most studies make use of data from and about like richer countries or cities, because of course this is where the data is mostly available. So of course there are some limitation in their reuse in other contexts. So like we need to find ways to test if the models maintain their validity when they're applied to a different region or country, maybe with different socioeconomic characteristics, and also if they remain valid over time, even that the process they're trying to mimic might have undergone changes from the historical data used for the training. And this is, for example, a big challenge that we're facing today with the model that I presented. Given that the results I presented to you are actually referred to a model that was trained and validated right before COVID started. So now we're still using it, but we are able to collect more and more data thanks to this continuous monitoring system. So now we are in the midst of actually retraining the model and trying to take into account also the changes that are happening like during these months, and like so that like more updated data is used. Like, so it's always a matter of, so whenever you have enough data available, you retrain your model, and then you can use it with knowing that it's a bit more representative of the current situation if that has changed. Finally, like the big challenge, but also the big opportunity here is to find ways to transition academic research efforts into operational tools that governments and international organizations can rely on for decision making. So first, the ideal scenario would be to try and integrate the proposed data methods into the existing systems that governments and organizations already have in place. And this is an effort that will require a challenging, but also very much needed closer collaboration between these two worlds. And to conclude on this note, I would also like to do a little bit of advertisement on this workshop that I'm organizing together with some colleagues also from my foundation. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm an active member of the Complex Systems Society, so my favorite conference is the Conference on Complex Systems. This year, the conference is going online given the situation. And so it will take place in December, and there's one full day dedicated to thematic workshops. And so I'm organizing this workshop on complex systems for the most vulnerable. The call for abstract is still open until Sunday. So yeah, if you are working in this space, if you have anything you'd like to share on using complex systems, data science, etc. for let's say for good applications, we're looking forward to receive your submission. Thank you very much.
Awkward Zoom clapping. Thank you. I'll second that. The recommendation, the Complex Systems Society conference is really, really fun. So I encourage you all to submit something to this session, or at least attend. It's a good conference. Thank you. That was a wonderful talk. If folks have questions, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can write a question into the chat. Sometimes it takes like a few moments for people to like muster the courage on Zoom to ask questions. So it's always, there we go. I knew it was gonna happen. Olin.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello,
Yes,
Elisa.
hello.
Nice to meet you again. We
How are
met
you?
actually in the Complex Systems Conference back in Cancun. It's great to have you here. It's great to have you here, and I'm submitting something for your satellite, so I'll be pleased to hear what you think about it. But my main question, and being this something like this being a talk, pretty open talk, is how can we, as like most of us PhD students, how can we build some kind of partnership with entities like yours, and what are the opportunities for us, like having finished our PhD? Like I haven't, but like in the future when I do, what are the opportunities to join your team, or like join a team with, like you said, innovation where you were before? And I don't know, like those are my main questions.
Yeah, thanks, yeah, for the question. Yeah, so I think there's two ways, or maybe more, but that's the what comes to my mind first. So one is, as you were saying, like building partnerships. So I think it's also very important that people like maybe stay in academia and work with these organizations. So there's a few ways to do this. For example, like through maybe like summer internship, like as a PhD student, you can do like a summer internship or more like a research visit. So for example, yeah, like at UNICEF, we used to do that quite a lot, and that was a great way to kickstart some collaborations with like PhD students and some academic labs. There is also the UN Global Pulse initiative, and they launched a program where like you can be sort of a fellow, like you're still like in your institution, your program, your PhD program, etc. But you can be associated as a fellow, and you work like also on a project with them as a sort of side project, or you can integrate it in your main project. I think so. Maybe let me type here in the chat the name of the initiative. They have a website with this kind of information. There's also the I know like OSHA as a like Center for Innovation as well, and they also, I know they organize like summer programs for like there's a predictive analytics team specifically where they have like summer programs where fellows work on different projects. And within WFP, we're still a very small team, so we don't have a lot of these initiatives yet, but this is something that I definitely like to develop more in the coming years. And yes, and then the other way, as you were saying, is like to maybe try and find job opportunities. So like there's not many openings yet, I think, like across all the different organizations. Like for example, even in the whole WFP, I think you will find an open position for data science like maybe once, twice a year. Like so my division is we are like one of the main divisions HQ where you do like some sort of data science, and we're just 3 people, and then sometimes regional offices or country offices around the world might want to hire someone. But yeah, like I have to admit, these are opportunities that come up only once in a while. But hopefully, like there is more and more need for this kind of profiles, and like organizations are more and more looking into data science applications. So I think that in the next few years, this will also expand. So yeah, what I can say, like in practical terms, is that yeah, like I try to, whenever I see something like this, I try to amplify, like on Twitter, maybe also yeah, like post on some mailing lists. But yeah, I will try to do that even more, more and more to make sure that these opportunities are amplified. I don't know if that yeah, replies your question. If you have any follow-up.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for this, and your talk. It was great.
Great. Other questions? So while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I was wondering maybe if you could just a follow up on Olin's question, like how did you get involved in this, and sort of what is your origin story in this type of research?
Right. So I was like towards the second year of my postdoc, and I started to feel like I wanted to find some research job in doing like a bit more of applied research in this realm, like yeah, like application for like societal challenges and things of the sort. And then but I had been looking like yeah, at UN websites, like different agencies. I had been looking for a while, but mostly like the kind of profiles that could more or less something that I could be a fit for, were like, I don't know, like, they were more often they look for statisticians, like in different agencies and divisions, which is something, I mean, I can do. I use a lot of statistics in my work, but that was not really, you know, like how I would define myself. And then actually I was on Twitter and I saw this retweet. So Manuel Garcia, who's the chief scientist at the UNICEF Office of Innovation, so he is a computer scientist, but he had been like to a conference of complex systems, and he had some like colleagues that were more linked to this work. So he had to hire a couple of people for his team, and instead of looking for more traditional profiles, he actually put out a call for he was looking for expertise in complex systems, complex networks, etc. And so I saw that like someone that I knew retweeted it, and I was like, oh, like someone is finally looking for my profile. So yeah, that was very exciting. And yeah, I managed to get the job.
That's exciting. I mean, it's so funny how something as just sort of small as Twitter can really change your life. I always find these like little things where I'm like, oh my God, everything sort of is hinged on this one tweet.
Yeah, I actually have that tweet screenshotted to save in my computer because it was so serendipitous.
Does anybody else have any questions? You can feel free to unmute yourself, show yourselves.
Yeah, by the way, I'm looking at the chat right now. I'm sorry it was breaking up.
Oh no, it was fine. It got better right like at the beginning.
Good.
People are usually a little shy at the first seminar of the series. So that's to be expected. They warm up a little bit over time. But
or it also being online doesn't
help. Yeah, I wanted to ask you another thing. Like something easy. Just if you could share some of the work you've done, some preprints or things like that, where we can see how this is being used, like more in depth.
On the specific project that I presented, I'm still working on it. So sorry, I don't have a preprint to share yet. Yeah, you can take a look. If you take a look at the hungermap.wp.org, there's some details there, like in the methodology section, and yeah. But maybe when the preprint is out, I'll make sure maybe to send it to Juniper, so I don't know if she can share the list, or I can also send it directly to you.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who would be really interested in this work at our university at UVM. We have a lot of folks who are working on like food systems. So I think they'll be really excited to hear a bit more about this once you have a preprint out.
Thanks.
Oh yeah,
I
John.
have a question. Well, like for the, I want to know this like this data you are working, is this available on the as an open source, or having some non-closure disagreements, like most of the people who are working with this, some organization like WHO or World Economic Forums don't disclose their data sets, or because there's some problem with the organizations, they only share the results, even though sometimes I haven't encountered some of them are like only shows some, not all the things, only some relevant things. So what's about that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So actually, the input variables, like the secondary data sources that we use for the model, they were all open data. So we ourselves we collected it from from the web. Some of the input data is not was actually from WFP, like market prices, but it is publicly available actually. I'm gonna type the link here, and then all the ground truth data that we use to validate the model, so the levels of food insecurity, that is actually something that we are like, if you go on the map now, for example, you will be able to see the numbers for the countries where we're doing the continuous monitoring, but of course, like, that's not a real data sharing, but let's say the information is public, but we are working on the API. So we're working on this API, and like, as soon as this is released, I hope by the end of the year, then you'll be able to download also like all the historical data, like for the country. So yeah, like the idea is for this to be a digital public good. Of course, we cannot share the household level information, but everything that is aggregated, yes, we're planning to share through this API.
That's great. Josh Mino, I think you're, oh.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa, thanks so much for talking with us today. It's really awesome work, really important. I wanted to ask about a topic on one of your latter slides, operationalizing a lot of this. Looking at a lot of work in this vein, it seems like a huge opportunity is kind of allowing under-resourced regions to leapfrog in terms of you know, the available data for decision support for producers, distributors, marketers in the food system. You know, I think about like the USDA's mandate in the United States early on was statistics, and it was really expensive, you know, historically, and a lot of that was of dubious value. But now with all the remote sensing technology, distributed sensing that you alluded to, it seems like there's a real opportunity for under-resourced regions to, you know, start getting access to some of those decision support tools. And it seems like there are a lot of NGOs, some for-profit organizations even, who are working on that. I'm just curious from your perspective, generally where that's at, perhaps in a particular region that you focus on, or if you have like a wish list for kind of harmonizing all of that and having there be like a more central source of truth for stakeholders who are are really in it every day and could utilize information like that?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah, so like I see this also like in the let's say little world of WFP, like so there's like right now, for example, we launched this hunger map, like which is sort of like a global map that was its original purpose, but right now like there's a demand from different countries to build sort of their own, like a more specific country level version of it, let's say. And this, well, this is mostly regarding food security, but in general, yeah, like countries, like governments and UN organizations working with those governments. There's more and more like this demand, let's say, for building systems where you can overlay different data together, find all the data in one place. There is also actually what I've seen is also that governments would like to use this information, as well as like WFP and other agencies, and these platforms where you have both public information, but then also be able to link it to in the back to social protection systems, etc. So you could have more a mix of public information that will allow you to make to get a sense of what's the socio-economic situation, etc. But then at the same time also have link this to a social protection system, for example, so that you would also know where you need to act, and then also have all that more private information linked in. So there are now some efforts in building this kind of mixed platforms that have private as well as public data, and how to manage also in a secure way this kind of systems. I've seen that from what I have seen, it seems that Southeast Asia is now quite advanced, and they have developed quite a few of this kind of platform, for example in Cambodia, in Indonesia, etc. But sub-Saharan African countries are also very interested in this, and some DRC, Nigeria, etc. They have been working in this direction for some time now. In terms also of places for also researchers and other people to find all the information in one place, there is also the Humanitarian Data Exchange. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's it's a website that is in a database that is managed by OCHA, and which is the UN agency for coordination of humanitarian affairs. And there, any data set that is produced by, for example, any of these agencies or even governments, etc., is then linked to this platform, and you can really you can search by country, by topic, the kind of data that you want. So that's pretty. That's very useful initiative, I think. It's called HDX.
Very cool.
We'll have to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the audience, from the audience?
Can I also ask questions?
Yeah. Just turn it on them. So thank you so much. This was an awesome talk, and I'm really excited to actually share it with a bunch of people. As I was listening, I was like, oh, this person needs to hear this talk. And so I have this little wish list of people I want to send it to once we have the recording. Thank you so much for being here. It's really nice to see you again. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the next seminar will be on November 11th, and we'll be hearing from Casey Feisler on tech ethics. So it should be a really fun discussion. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thanks very much. I'm really happy. Like it was fun to interact with some of you after.
I know, right?
And yeah.
Well, hopefully,
And,
once this is all over, we can invite
Hope
you
to
in
see you.
person.
I love that. Yes, I hope that can happen.